so excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us on your Thursday evening. I really appreciate it. My name is McKaylee. I work with Tattered Cover Bookstore, and it is my pleasure to talk about a book that is very much true to Denver and Boulder in ways that I don't think any other books really can be. It's so, you guys are going to love it. I grew up here in Colorado and never been an outdoorsy person, but recently I've been slowly but surely learning to get out there. My friends Janice and Ashley have been taking me out on hikes. My boyfriend likes mountain disc golfing, and this is something that I dove into, and I was like, okay, I can read this book and see what hikes I might be able to do, or quote unquote princess hikes. But it doesn't just have that. It has more for advanced hikers and everything in between. And we're going to get to it in just a moment here. I want to just tell you a little bit about Tattered Cover. And I'll give you an update. All 4 of our stores are open. Well, that's not true. Dang it. I got so excited about that. Our Union Station store had to close just temporarily, but it's going to reopen soon. But we did open our historic Lodo location on 16th and Wine Coop, which is very exciting. It's open every single day of the week except Tuesday. Our Aspen Grove location is now open 7 days a week. And our Colfax Avenue store is open every single day except Tuesday. You can still do curbside pickup at our Colfax Avenue location, but if you're wearing your mask, you can come on in to any of our bookstores and browse the copies of books that we might have in stock. And as always, our website's open 24/7, so you can always continue online ordering. We are so appreciative of you continuing to support your local independent stores, local independent businesses, whether it's the restaurant down the road, the mom and pop restaurant that you're ordering from, or it's coming into a bookstore or ordering online. We can't tell you how much we thank you for that. And we thank you for joining us this evening as well. Just to let you know, closed captioning is enabled for those who might need it. So just click that button that says CC on it at the bottom of your video screen there, and you can read along as needed. I want to talk about the author that we have here today. Mindy Sink is the author of the updated 60 Hikes Within 60 Miles of Denver and Boulder. She's also the author of Walking Denver and the Moon Handbook's Guide to Denver. And she's the co-author of Colorado Organic, Cooking Seasonally, Eating Locally. She has written extensively for the New York Times, and her work has also appeared in the Christian Science Monitor, Sunset Magazine, and many other well-known publications and websites. Mindy lives in Denver with her husband and their daughter. And I'm so excited to welcome Mindy, and we're going to talk about her book, 60 Hikes Within 60 Miles of Denver. And I'm going to have her join me right now. So here we go. Hi, Mindy.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Congratulations on your book. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Yay, we're happy to have you, even virtually. Thank you so much. I'm excited. It's fun because you're one of the very few authors that I haven't had to coordinate time zones with. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we're both here at 5 o'clock.
Yes, exactly. So as I was telling Mindy before, I was so excited to flip through this book. And I am a very novice hiker, but I love that you've got such a range of hikes in there for people of all ages. And you talk about that as a goal in the book. I'd love if you could just expand a little bit more about that, and maybe also give us a hint as to what this book is, like beyond just being an amazing guidebook.
Yeah, so what's interesting is this book existed before. The publisher does this book as a series. So there's 60 Hikes Within 60 Miles of
Portland
or Portland or some other city. And they hadn't updated the Denver version in about 10 years. And
that's too long.
Yeah, I know. It's cool to think that they are creating new trails all the time, but that's a different topic. So when they asked me to do this is the same publisher that I worked with on my Walking Denver book that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And at first I was feeling like I'm not really, a hiker, but that's fine. I could do it. So if I could do it, you could do it. You can do all these hikes. And so when I first started doing the book, I would post on social media and people started saying, oh, I'd love to come. Can I join you? And I would say, yes, of course, I would love that. And what I discovered was everybody has different, a range of different abilities and needs and schedules when they're hiking. And so I really took that to heart when coming up with these hikes. I mean, Some of these were in the previous edition, and I'm grateful to the previous author for laying that groundwork for me. And then I also wanted to include as many new trails as I could. But as I was hiking with people, I would be hiking with a friend with their young child, or my parents in their 70s, or somebody who's recovering from an injury, or somebody who competes as an athlete. So all these things went into, okay, this, not everybody's going to be able to do this kind of hike. Not everybody's going to have time to drive up to the mountains and do this. Let's do something a little bit closer to town. So all those experiences with people reaching out and asking if they could join me were so helpful to the research, because it gave me a chance to have a sense of all kinds of people that are going to go hiking.
That's so great. And that's what, like I said, I mentioned before I started talking about Tattered Cover, just about my own personal experiences. And I was so excited to read this book and see that it really was for anybody of any level, the way you organized it, and working with the publisher on their different classifications, so to speak, of the different hikes, which was really helpful. But one of the things that when I was flipping through it, was I love that you talk about how you were late to hiking, and that it was like you've lived here for a long period of your life, but you came to it late like me. And can you elaborate on that? Can you tell us a little bit more about how you fell into this?
Well, I mean, again, when they asked me to do the book, they said they were looking for somebody who was an expert using GPS, and who had a certain period of time available, and who knew most of these trails.
Yeah.
And even though I grew up here, like a lot of people who grew up here, I think, maybe like you, I was more like, yeah, I went hiking this year. I didn't really, it wasn't like I'm, this like competitive hiker or anything. I mean, I just, if that was something we were going to do as a family, maybe we'd do it. And so it came down to, I eventually said yes to doing the book, even though I felt like I wasn't quite ready to meet those qualifications. But once I have a deadline, I am really like focused on doing my research. And so it was, okay, I'm just going to jump in and do all this. And then I just had to start hiking once a week. And it wasn't, I mean, sometimes it was kind of challenging because I also have a full-time job.
Yeah.
So it was like squeezing it into, after work or on the weekends, and sometimes, 2 hikes in one day. And after a while, I just acclimated and fell in love with it, and really felt like, this is really good for my mental health. And I was having fun meeting up with friends and, doing it with my family, and it just became part of my life.
That's wonderful to hear, because it's another level of inspiration for maybe, like you said, people who maybe aren't as competitive, but they still can explore these trails and just kind of get into it and do more than just the obligatory Coloradan hike of the year. I'm curious, how many trails did you walk? Did you do all of them in the book, or close to? Where'd you get to?
I think I kind of lost count, but I think to do the research, I probably hiked somewhere over 70 trails, because some of them I just ended up not liking for various reasons. And so, yeah, it was definitely somewhere over 70, and I would forget. So and be like, oh yeah, I did that one too. I did that one too. I didn't like that one. I'm not using it. And, but that's how that I picked the best ones, because it's not like I just went and did 60 and said, done.
Yeah.
I would say, oh man, I got to find a different one. I wouldn't recommend that one to somebody. So I always think of that, because I've been writing guidebooks for a while. And so I think about, okay, if these people were visiting, would I take them here? Well, maybe not. So I kind of use that criteria as I'm selecting hikes.
No, that's really great to hear that you put more into it and really thinking about it on a recommendation level. Did you have any fun stories you want to share from the trail? Like, I don't know, something memorable of when you were hiking with a particular group, or anything that you feel up to sharing?
Well, yeah, I have lots of stuff I can share. One thing I did want to say that's different from the previous edition to this edition was, in the previous edition, there were hikes in Colorado Springs that were in the book. And when I started researching it, I realized these hikes are considerably beyond 60 miles away from, essentially, like, obviously where you live and I live, it's going to be different to drive over to a hike in Golden, right?
Yes.
We don't live together. So it's not going to be exactly 60 miles for everybody. So kind of like using downtown Denver as a pinpoint and then saying 60 miles from here or downtown Boulder, because it's from either one of those. But once you get into like 75, 80, 90 miles away, I'm like, this is a different book like that. Then you're just like some front range hikes I liked. So I kind of created a cutoff for that and eliminated a lot of the hikes in Colorado Springs, which was unfortunate because there are some amazing hikes. But even Garden of the Gods is over 70 miles from downtown Denver. And I just felt like I want to be true to the title of the book. And I ended up adding a hike, Mount Herman, in Monument, Colorado, which is just right before Colorado Springs. Like when you're on the top of Mount Herman, you can see the Air Force Base, and that's kind of cool, and towards Colorado Springs. So I felt like, okay, that's my Colorado Springs hike. And even though it is only 2 miles round trip, it's quite a doozy. It actually took me 3 tries to do the hike, which sounds pathetic. And everybody is like, who is this expert? But the first time I went, there was still snow, and it's actually a dirt road and hard to get to. And the Forest Service doesn't plow the road. Okay. And so I thought, I can do this. And I went to the wrong trailhead. And then I ran out of time and I was just too nervous to try the road. And so I gave up on the first try. Second time I went, and other people had told me this, like, you're going to reach this old rock slide and you have to go a certain direction. It's so confusing. You get there and you think, okay, I know what I'm doing. And you start going. And yes, at some point you're going to get to the top, but I realized, no, I have to make the right call to put in the book. And it got super windy, so we left and I didn't get it. Had to go back. A couple months later, finally made it. I'm telling you, every time I did that hike, there were other people at the rock slide standing around going, oh, which way? It's so confusing. So that's one example of just trying to get it right and things not quite going right. But it was so important to me to include that hike because I just really wanted to somehow include Colorado Springs, even though I wanted to also honor not making people drive more than an hour for these hikes.
Yeah.
So
maybe the publisher will ask you to do 60 hikes and 60 miles of Colorado Springs next time.
Hikes, I don't know.
No, but I like that you tried to really keep true to the title, because I think often about, there's this quote, I can't remember who said it, but talked about people driving to go exercise always felt very backwards to him. But sometimes to get to the mountains, it does take like an hour drive. And I'm curious about, like, what routes or plans did you have for yourself when trying out these hikes? Because it took a lot of effort. Like you said, you had to plan. You and I were talking before, and you mentioned your full-time job of planning on the weekends or after work or something. And what did your planning process look like when it came to that, especially when including the drives and your family?
I wish I had a planning process. It was not like that. It was much more, again, with friends reaching out saying, I want to hike with you. It came down to that. Making those kind of plans. And I mean, one time I was having Thanksgiving with my mom, and I said, I would love to do a sunrise hike tomorrow morning. And I was looking at this one, and it's out near Longmont. And she said, okay. And, so I met her the next morning. It was terribly windy. We were so cold. Our pictures are hilarious. So bundled up. It's like, I'm in here. But it was just that kind of randomness. So like after Thanksgiving, my husband and daughter and I did a quick hike. We were having Thanksgiving dinner at the Boulderado Hotel that year. Aww. And I said, there's a hike just up, we'll just go up Flagstaff Road up to Walker Ranch. Okay. So off we went. It was very random. I cannot say I had a plan, but it worked out beautifully. It would just come down to, I have one friend who hiked with me. He lives up in Dillon, up in Summit County. So it was like, how can he meet me? We did a hike just outside of Idaho Springs that was amazing. I think it's called Hell's Hole. And there are these beautiful bristlecone pines. So he came down, I came up. We kind of met there at the trailhead. Just that kind of stuff. So plan, serendipity.
No plan, serendipity. I love it. That's so great. So where did you start? You obviously had the hikes from the previous edition, but it's been 10 years. And you
Yeah.
mentioned in your preface the kind of beauty of creating new trails, and we're going to get the Front Range Trail very soon, and the one from Denver to gosh, I'm going to forget. But anyway, but you mentioned the creation of new trails all the time. So where did you start? Did you start with what the guidebook had given you, or?
Yeah, I definitely did. I started there, and I was just interested to just kind of get myself in shape and get used to going and figuring out, well, what do I need when I go on a hike? And that kind of thing. So I started with those that were closer to me, like Green Mountain and Lakewood was a good one to start with. And starting to just get a sense of what kind of trails do I want to recommend. I mean, a lot of trails are shared by mountain bikers. And so, saying, okay, do I want to have, at some of these places have like a little hiker only option. Is it worth it? I don't know. So just started with the ones that were closest to Denver, and then sort of branching out, going, farther and farther, just because it's going to take more time, and just, again, kind of getting my sea legs on the whole thing, my hiking legs, I guess we should call
Hiking. Love it. You mentioned your pictures with your mom about like this big, but can we talk about the pictures in the book? Because there's some really great ones. How did you go about getting those? Working with photographers? What was that process like?
I took most of the pictures in the book, and I do have a fun story about the cover of the book, though. So at the end of the day, as in the process of researching the book, I was posting on Instagram and seeing, started following other hiking groups or people on Instagram as well. And there's this photographer in Boulder. I've never met her to this day. And so there we were finishing up the book, and the publisher sent me some photos from what I had taken. Oh, what do you think about this or that for the cover? And I wasn't loving the options, and which is weird to say because they were my pictures, but they just didn't seem coverish. And I had done a significant number of these hikes in the winter. That's how my schedule worked out. So I knew this book was going to be coming out in spring, and I didn't want it to be a wintry cover. I didn't want, there was like this one image of me, and, I'm wearing like gloves and a hat, and I'm like, what a weird, I'm like, I want people to be like excited. Like, this is summer. Even though I love hiking in the winter. So I sent this woman I don't know a message on Instagram and said, hey, I have this book coming out and your pictures are amazing. What would you think about sending me some that we could use for the cover of my new book? And, I can't pay you $1 million. And she said, oh, sure. So I was so excited that she said yes. I do really love her pictures. And so she sent me some pictures, and we picked one and used it for the cover. And I'm just so pleased with that.
I love that you had input on your cover too. So many authors don't get that. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it was really fun. And I think the pictures just really here's the cover, by the way.
Yay, perfect.
Very summery and colorful. I just love it. It's got like yellows and greens and the beautiful blue Colorado sky. I love it.
It pops. It looks so great on there. I'm curious about, what a lot of people in the age of coronavirus and quarantine, once the national parks started opening up again, have taken to hiking, and we're utilizing this amazing resource that we've been given in the state that we live in. What advice do you have for hikers during this age of coronavirus?
I have a lot of advice. Actually, I've been thinking a lot about it just because I'm like everybody else wanting to get out and enjoy nature and make the most of it, and just, staycation.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. But I mean, in terms of, first, I have just some trail etiquette, which is, please be respectful. These might be lands that we all share, but we want them to be there forever. And there are a lot of volunteers who make these trails. I mean, I was just up on Mount Bierstadt, one of Colorado's 14ers, on Monday morning, and we ran into the trail workers, and they're there building the trail. I mean, these huge rocks, it's over 13,000 feet in elevation. And it's like these beautiful, almost like cobblestone walls they're building to shore up the dirt and the rocks and make it a better and easier trail. I mean, people work, I mean, those weren't volunteers, they're getting paid, but there are also volunteers. And it's just so important to be respectful of how much work goes into making these trails for all of us to use. And whether it's cleaning up after your dog or your snacks or whatever it is, it's just so important because it's important for to keep the wildlife safe. That's so fun to see, you know, when you're out there hiking. And
Yeah.
it's also just important to, you know, keep the land itself, the plants, the water, all of it, just to keep it clean for everybody to use. So leave no trace is really important. And a lot of trailheads will have signage. It's important to read that for them to explain to you why they want you to follow these rules. And as far as tips on hiking while you're out there enjoying the trails, I'm a big believer in going really early in the morning. I know it's so hard. And I've been hiking with some friends lately. And at first they were not happy. You know, they would, you know, we'd meet at the trailhead at about 5 a.m. and they'd say, "We're cursing you in the car." And I'm like, "That's okay. You'll thank me later." And I just love it. You know, you really can get some of these spaces to yourself if you can go at a different time of day. You can find optimum conditions. But if you do go and it's already full, then don't park illegally and all that. You know, again, be respectful of the resources in the surrounding areas and come back later, have a plan B, all those things.
Yeah. No, I loved the section on trail etiquette. It was something I literally had no idea was a thing. And I mean, other than being just a respectful human being, but I love the way that you laid it out in there. And I think that very much applies to any new hikers or people returning to it in this age of coronavirus. I want to talk about the benefits of hiking and what you found for yourself and maybe, or your family found. You mentioned briefly about mental health and how that helped you. And so what are the benefits of hiking that you found?
I mean, I actually wrote this blog for the publisher about, I think I called it like 10 Zenish things I learned from hiking 60 trails.
Awesome.
And one of the first things I was saying was I learned how to meditate while hiking,
Mm-hmm.
which I mean, I have meditated. It is different, but that idea of turning off your monkey brain, your monkey mind, and it really, for me, I just slowly started noticing it, you know. So I would drive off to a trail and, you know, before I left, I would think, okay, I got all these things to do and I got to think about this and I've got, you know, this and that. I'll figure that problem out. I'll solve it while I'm hiking. I'll think that through and then I'll have an answer later. But what kept happening was I would get to the trail, I'd go off to do the hike and I had things to think about, you know, because I am working on the book. So I would, you know, set my GPS and, you know, have to mark waypoints and these kind of things. So I wasn't completely checked out, but I was, but I would get back to the car and I would be like, oh yeah, I was gonna think about that thing. You know what? It doesn't matter. And it was like, whatever, the problem sort of solved itself, you know, while I was out there hiking. And I would just come back and just feel calmer. And I don't know. I mean, it just sort of naturally fell into place. So there's that benefit. Think, you know, just going out and being mindful about your surroundings and nature and not thinking about your to-do list. I mean, just thinking about, oh, what's that flower? Or what do I hear? Or, you know, using your senses in a way that I don't think we do when we're on these devices. And really, you know, right now we're not really using our senses. I'm not using my sense of smell or taste or much at all to sit here and talk to you. But when you're out in nature, you're really using those parts of your mind again. It's just so important. I'm probably not going to list all 10 things that I did in
That
my
is okay. That's okay.
about the Zenish things, but you know, it was just important to learn how to be prepared was another thing. When I first was hiking, I would, you know, I was like, I got a water bottle, and it's like, man, you got to think, what are you really going to need? What if things go wrong? How are you going to let people know? How are you going to get rescued? How are you going to, do you have a windbreaker? Do you have a second pair of socks? Do you, I mean, it sounds like I'm just going out on a day hike, but you really got to be mindful of these things, things can happen out there.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some things that you want people to take away from this book when they're using it, or how do you want them to use it? What do you hope for this book?
Kind of what I said when I started, which is that I felt like if I can do it, anybody can do it. And because this is a series, some of these hikes might not feel so hikey to people. One is definitely more of an urban walk. But I tried to, because that's a requirement, so that anybody could go, right? So it's somebody who's in a wheelchair, somebody who's pushing a stroller, somebody who's just not that fit or acclimated to the altitude here. So many people are like, I'm this like athlete now. But I mean, just getting out and walking around a pond can provide a lot of the benefits that a big hike would. You might see a lot of local birds.
Yeah.
You could get out there at different times of day, challenge yourself and go once every season so that you see the changes in nature and the changes in that environment in 4 different seasons. And I love doing that. I love going and, like, God, last time I was here, I don't remember seeing that or hearing that, or, wow, look what that flower looks like in the fall. It's not blooming, but it's doing this other thing. Right.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be, 13 miles with, 1,500 feet elevation gain or whatever it is. It's like, there's space for everybody, every ability. And so I really want people to feel like they can get out there and enjoy nature and benefit from nature without it being that, that they have to be some sort of warrior or have all this gear or, spend a lot of time driving back and forth or whatever that is. I mean, this should be something that, you could do with somebody who's visiting from out of town who, isn't able to go up to a certain elevation. Right. And, not everybody wants to be or needs to be challenged in that way. But you can get out and still enjoy these places and, have those experiences without having to feel like, oh, I'm not good at this. So I really just want people to find different ways to enjoy themselves outdoors.
Well, thank you for giving us a guidebook to do that. I'm sure that I'm not the only one who appreciates it. And I want to open it up now to any of our viewers that are watching. If you have any questions for Mindy about tips and tricks on hiking, the book itself, please feel free to comment. Some of you have already been very active in the chat, so we thank you guys so much for doing that and for watching. Someone wants to know do you have a favorite of the hikes, which I feel like is probably picking like your favorite child or your favorite book or something like that, but what's your favorite? Do you have one?
Okay, I do have a favorite. The truth is, yes, I do have more than one favorite, but my favorite is Lake Isabel, which is up in the Indian Peaks Wilderness area. It is a very popular area, so just warning you there. It's not like some secret. But what I love about it is that it's about 5 miles round trip, and it is everything you want in a hike. I mean, it's not too hard. You've got good parking, you've got bathrooms, you've got maybe a ranger depending on the time of day at the trailhead. You've got probably wildflowers, you've got water, and boom, this amazing view of these peaks with, a little snow at the end. It's at one point you hike over kind of a waterfall. I mean, it's really just got everything. I mean, I'm like, it's got all the Colorado in it in one little hike. So that would be my favorite, but I have others too.
Nice. I love that. That's so, that makes me want to go. That's so great. I'm like planning my weekend already.
Okay, good. Just go really early.
Really early. Oh yeah, it's funny you mentioned 5 a.m. The last hike that my friends took me on, they were like, "Oh, we're gonna be there at 7." And when you were talking about early, in my head, I went to 7, and you mentioned 5, and I was like, "Oh, gross."
Yeah, I mean it.
Yeah. No, I think I think it's great, and it's tips like these that for newbies like me, I didn't even think about. So some other questions that we have are, what are you working on now? Like, what is your next project or next guidebook? We know it's not the Colorado Springs 60 hikes, but what are you working on right now?
I don't have another guidebook right now. I am just focused on this one. This was, really exciting to work on, and I'm excited to be promoting it.
Mm-hmm. That's great. You deserve a break, I would think.
I was honestly asked to do another book and was like, I don't think I can handle one more right now. They were like, you could do them together. I'm like, cannot do that.
Good for you for knowing your limits and knowing when to go. How did your family feel about you taking on this and the experience and them coming with you? Were they hesitant or resistant at first?
No, everybody was really supportive. Actually, when I updated my Walking Denver book, I invited my daughter to be my co-author. And she was around 11, I think, at the time. And I had this idea that the book should have kid tips in it because I felt like all of these walks could be done by families. And so the Walking Denver book has 32 walks that are urban walks in Denver. And I mean, one of them's up on Lookout Mountain, but it's Denver-ish. And so I did not invite her to be my co-author this time, but she is the person who came on the most hikes with me as I was doing research. So I mean, I had a lot of support. It was wonderful. I hiked with my mom and stepfather and my dad and my husband and my daughter, and my sister even was visiting one time from Chicago, and we did a hike together, and that was crazy because it was snowing, but she was just visiting during this short time, so we went anyway. That was wild. I was like in the middle of a snowstorm. I'll keep going, kind of snowshoed it, and yeah.
I love the story y'all will tell it at the next Christmas. That's great.
Yeah.
So someone wants to know, I think this might be an inside question, but how much do you love the Mount Audubon hike on a scale from awesome to bestest ever?
I know who's asking that. My friend Steve, I call the volunteer hiking coach.
What do you mean by that? Can you elaborate?
Well, Steve is somebody who competes in mountain biking and biathlons, and and doesn't take himself too seriously, so was still willing to hike with me. And I called him the volunteer hiking coach because I felt like I needed a hiking coach. So we went hiking, and he would say, well, what about this? Maybe you should do that. Started calling him my volunteer hiking coach. I don't think he liked the title as much as I did. But anyway, I also called him my gentleman hiking coach because he is so sweet. And we did hike Mount Audubon, and it was amazing. But at a certain point, the wind, which is pretty much always blowing there, was so intense. And so we were coming down, and Steve was so sweet and hiking pretty close behind me to buffer the wind. And I would say, well, I just want to sit down and get out of the wind. And he would say, you can't do that. No, we have to keep going. So I would say most awesome. Yeah. It most is cool. Awesome. You get up there and there are these little like rock nests, hide from the wind, but it wasn't enough. It was still too windy.
Too windy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Steve. You played a vital role in this book, and we appreciate it.
Yes.
I'm curious as to anything that you would recommend that people don't do. Like, what is a huge no-no when it comes to hiking that you just are like, or maybe a pet peeve even? That might be another way of describing it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I do find hiking in sandals kind of weird. I don't want to do it, but some people it works for them for some reason. I'm not sure. I don't understand. I mean, I just feel like the potential for injuring yourself seems pretty high, but it's not going to hurt me. Right. I do find it hilarious, actually, here in Colorado. I was just laughing about this on Monday during our hike, but the trail runners, I mean, you're out there giving it your all. You've got all the gear on. And I mean, and these people come literally jogging by in nothing but a pair of shorts. And every time it's like, man, what is the deal? Like, that is a different species or something. So it's not a pet peeve. It's just this hilarious thing where I'm always like, damn, just when I was feeling awesome about hiking, this happens. But it happens on every trail.
Yeah.
Every trail. In the winter, in the summer, every trail, even on a 14er. They're there.
Wow.
Jogging up. Yeah.
Have you traveled anywhere else to do hiking, and how does Colorado compare?
I do hike in other places, and I do love Southern Utah so much. And as a result, there are places I like to go hiking that, where they have like red rock formations. But I think Colorado, as far as how it compares, what I think is that it just has such an incredible variety.
Mm-hmm.
So in some places you might be like, all right, I just, I went out and hiked in the desert, or hiked between the rocks, or I, had that experience. But here you can do all of that in a week. You can, be out kind of on the plains, and it can be flat, and you can be climbing a 14er and be up in the snow, even in the summer. You can go where there are some red rocks and hike around the red rocks. So there's just this amazing variety here that I don't necessarily find in other places.
Yeah. What is your favorite season to hike in?
I mean, you cannot beat the wildflowers. You can't beat it. I mean, summer is hiking season. Okay. Yeah. But I will say, teaching myself to go hiking in winter was pretty cool, because when everybody's saying, oh, the trails are too crowded and all these people are out, let me tell you, go in the winter.
That's the trick.
Yeah, go in the winter and still go early. I mean, it's a different experience. It's like the landscape's different. You can hike the same trail in the summer and the winter and have a completely different experience. It will feel like a different trail. Wow. And I just really enjoyed doing that. And there is, for those people who want that sense of solitude, that is when you're going to find it. Of course, there are more risks, and you definitely need micro spikes all the time. So don't leave home without your micro spikes if you're going to hike in the winter.
Nice. I had to think about what that meant for a hot second, because I was like, I am not well schooled enough to know what that was like right off the bat, but then context clues helped out there. Do you consider yourself an expert now?
Sometimes I feel like no, but then if I go hiking with people who haven't done much hiking, I definitely feel expert-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I do have opinions and some advice to give on things that I learned along the way from people like volunteer hiking coach Steve, about what kind of gear I needed and the kind of things I should be thinking about.
Yeah. So you could literally say you wrote a book on the subject. So,
I mean, I learned from, just like one day I went to meet a friend on a hike that I didn't end up including in the book, but, we were talking, it was very like pre-dawn, and he said, hang on, I need to take an Advil. We've been talking a lot, and I can feel that I'm going to get like an altitude headache. And I'm like, I have never hiked without that Advil again. Like, just that idea of like, okay. So I just learned from the people I was hiking with. Instead of being embarrassed that I didn't know what I was doing, I was like, I'm excited. I'm going to go with somebody who knows stuff I don't know, and I'm going to learn from them.
But I think that's so great, and that you just dove into something that necessarily wasn't your forte, and yet you've grown enough in yourself to be able to write this book and feel confident enough in sharing it with other people. And now I'm sure you have a plethora of stories that you could also share beyond the guidebook, and how you grew to do this. And you said you have a blog that you did or sharing on social media. Are there places that people can find you and maybe read some of these or see some of the other pictures?
Yeah, so I have a website, mindysync.com, and then I share any writing that I do about hiking. I've been writing some more for the publisher's blog, the Menasha Ridge Press blog, and then I'll share a link to that blog also on my website.
Great.
And then I'm posting on Instagram. and Facebook, like whenever I do a hike, sharing a little bit about whatever. It was pretty or something I learned or something funny or I don't know.
Yeah. No,
So,
so we have to follow you on there. That's great.
yeah.
So I think this is a great question to end on here before
Okay.
before we do our closing. But what is your next hike? Do you have it planned already?
I don't have my next hike planned, but it's been fun because I've been doing hikes that aren't in the book.
Okay.
Yeah, I recently did one that's really popular, Herman Gulch. It's no secret, but I really loved it. I probably wouldn't have included it in the book just because it's too popular, but it was beautiful. So I'm having fun looking at hikes that I haven't done before. I really want to do a hike to Chasm Lake, which is up Long's Peak. I have no interest in doing Long's Peak,
Yeah.
so that's one I want to do. And I don't know, I might be interested in just going somewhere else to do some hikes too, not just Colorado.
That's awesome. Mindy, I cannot thank you enough for spending this time with us and again for writing this amazing guidebook. It's 60 hikes within 60 miles of Denver and Boulder. And you guys can get it now at tattercover.com. Mindy, I want to give you just some time if there's anything you want to add about the book or anything else you just want to say before we close out.
Well, I would say that if you are new to the book and new to hiking and you use the book, I would love a review somewhere online.
Yeah.
I don't care, it's your choice. I'd love to hear it's the feedback, right? Because I'm just sort of tired of talking about my experience. I want to hear other people's experience with these hikes and what they liked and what worked or what they'd suggest and that kind of thing. That for me, that's going to be really fun when people have a chance to start using it and then sharing those experiences. I'm super excited about.
So what's the best way that they can share that with you?
Well, I mean, wherever you want to leave your reviews. I mean, Goodreads is one platform that I like to go on, and I personally like to read other reviews there for books that I'm reading or might be reading. And wherever people are buying their books and they can leave reviews is where I appreciate them.
And then what are your social media handles so we can follow your beautiful pictures?
Well, on Instagram, it's just Mindy Sink.
Great, that's easy.
Very easy. And I'm on Twitter as well, and that's just my last name and my first initial.
Great.
So yeah, you can find me on there and share your thoughts or see what I'm up to.
Well, Mindy, like I said, thank you so much for diving in and doing a lot of the work for us, and then that hopefully that inspires a lot of people, including myself, to continue hiking and trying out these different trails of all kinds. And I really, like I said, I encourage you guys to get this book on tattercover.com. This is how popular it is right now. I could not find any copies to bring with me to hold up as a display. So you need to get your copy. It's amazing. Yes. Thank you, Mindy. Perfect. And get your copy today. You guys, I promise it'll be worth it. And you got the whole rest of the year to get outside and get started. So Mindy, if you just want to hang out for a second here before we cut the feed, that would be great. Thank you guys again for joining us. And we hope you stay safe and happy reading.
Thank you.
And we're out.